fan there.
Motion to go back into regular session.
Make a motion to go back to regular session.
Motion made to go into regular session at 4:44. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Back in regular session. Appealing persons, you may present your evidence.
I guess that's me. I would like to, number one, make a couple of statements, and one of them is, I would like to know if I can ask questions. Can I ask questions? Mr. Tennant, can I ask questions?
No, that's not the process. You
Okay.
are to present evidence.
All right, what I'm going to do is read the appeal that was handed to you guys on July 22nd. I do not know whether or not Mr. Jenkins and JB Oil and Gas got a copy of it. If they did not, perhaps I can make a copy and give it to them.
We've got it. Thank you.
Honey, I didn't get anything from you guys. Okay. Anyway, the points that I have, the first is the elevation study that was done on the location was based on elevations after the site had been altered. From what I could read in the permit application, it appeared that the elevation study was done in 2012, December of 2012, and by December of 2012 there was a rig on site, and the rig had actually drilled 2 vertical holes on that location. In order to prepare the well pad, topsoil had been removed from the location and is in mounds on the location, and tons and tons of gravel were placed on site. I do not know how many tons of gravel were placed on site, but at the commission meeting, Dan told me that the survey that was used for the floodplain study or the permit that was applied for were done after the site was altered. So my question is, that particular activity changed the elevations on the site, and according to the floodplain ordinance, it appears we have a 1-foot limit of what you can change as far as elevation goes in the floodplain itself. So the other thing that I thought, the maps that were provided in the application did not show any of the dwellings. The maps where the floodway and the floodwaters routine did not show the dwellings that are in close proximity to that pad. There is one dwelling, which is a rental dwelling that's owned by the Kaufmans, and they rent it out, which is probably about 150, 200 feet downstream of the well pad, directly downstream of the well pad. There's another residence which is approximately 600 feet downstream of the well pad. And then upstream of the well pad, there's the Kaufman residence, and I think that might be 700 or 800 feet, but I might be wrong on that. So I found that in looking at that, the mere fact that this mapping that was done, that was showing, it just strictly showed the well pad, but it didn't show what effects would be on residents living close to the area. Although the permit that was applied for, and it was stated in there, and a response Mr. Jenkins made to the comment period that we had, Mr. Jenkins stated that those dwellings were noted in the permit applications for the wells that were submitted to the West Virginia DEP, which I personally thought they were submitted on that, but the whole purpose of the floodplain ordinance or the permit application is to deal with the floodplain issues, not the permitting that went on for the wells that are or were to be drilled. I also want to note that the well pad, parts of that well pad are completely level with Route 23 when you drive where the graveled area is. And I do have some pictures that illustrate that. but it's kind of completely level with Route 23. The residence that's downstream, right next downstream, in order to access that residence, their driveway goes down to get to where that trailer is. So unfortunately, I don't have any pictures or evidence of what that drain looked like before JB did the well pad construction. But it just seems odd to me that within real close proximity, you got an area that's level and then you have an area where there's a dip. The other point that I would like to make is that the JB study only considers the well pad. They did not consider the floodway, which is floodwaters are not limited to an area like, say, the size of this table. But the study that Mr. Gilbert did, from my interpretation, was strictly related to the well pad. There was no consideration for residences or terrain upstream of the well pad or downstream of the well pad. Now, in research that I did, and I did talk to Mr. Gilbert, the whole issue is, you know, water is fluid. I mean, that sounds like an oxymoron statement to make, but we've all witnessed how water acts. So it's going to either get jammed up if something's blocking it, or it's going to take the course of least resistance as far as how it moves downstream or sideways or whatever. It's not going to be contained to an area, especially if that area is you know, somehow or other not isolated. You know, maybe in a swimming pool, but not in the terrain that we have around here. Mr. Wellings also stated that Mr. Gilbert, who is an expert in his field, and I don't deny that, did the studies that were done for the Huffs in regards to the issue in the southern part of the county regarding the EQT episode. In speaking to the Huffs and the Fosters, the study that Mr. Gilbert did for them encompassed a much larger area. It took into effect the other streams and creeks that were draining into the field. It took into effect the floodway. It did not limit it to a small area. They looked at the impact that was going to be upstream and downstream. You know, they a much larger area. The floodplain modeling that is done, most of it that's done is based on computer modeling. And although computers make wonderful tools, and they make doing certain types of studies or mapping and stuff really relatively easy if you know what you're doing, but you can get a quick visual of what it is if you plug in certain things. But I know in my particular experience of living in this region for 32 years, what I have noticed, depending on what these floodplain modeling tools are based on and what data is used, I know personally from watching the area that I live in, the floods and the intensity and the frequency of the flooding that we have had in this county has been drastically increasing over the last several years. This year alone, we have had 4 major flood episodes in the county. 4. The last one being last Tuesday. One of the drawings in the permit application shows a berm around the whole well pad. Okay? So there's a berm, and I'm making the assumption that's to contain stuff that would be in the well pad if there are any spills, you know, as a safety precaution. Well, nowhere that I could see in the drawings was there an elevation or a height for that berm. So if the floodplain ordinance state there's a foot a change in elevation, if you have a berm around the whole area and that berm is going to be 2 feet, that's a real, that's something that needs to be considered. So I don't know what, what was used or whatever, how that was determined. And I know it's for safety to maintain the spills and chemicals that might, at least I'm assuming that. I shouldn't say I know. And it appears that the elevation in the area from the West Virginia floodplain flood tool map, the elevation in that area is around 760 feet, but it appears to drop like a foot as you progress through a certain distance. And I do have a copy of a map from the West Virginia flood tool that shows the elevation change. So if you're coming downstream, like from the Broad Run area and stuff, it might be 765 feet there. When you get to the well pad area at where Riggins Run is, it drops down to 758 feet in elevation. Through the property, it only seems to be from the flood tool, there only seems to be like a foot difference, maybe a foot and a half difference from the edge of the well pad upstream to the well pad going downstream. Also of note, and this might not have anything to do with the floodplain ordinance, but in table G4 of the application, they list potential discharge in gallons of stuff that would be stored on site. This translates to 84,000 gallons of condensate. Condensate is pretty much sort of the nasty cocktail of chemicals that they save, like we'll have in the tanks, and it's the condensate that recently in July we had the incident at the Antero well pad, the ruddy pad where the fire, where the men were burned and 2 died. So it's not good stuff. I mean, there's benzene tooling, xylenes, benzenes, and just a really nasty mixture. So 84,000 gallons of condensate. And I realized that in the application it states if any tanks are on site, etc., that they would be anchored with trailer anchoring to hold them in place. I also have access to a photograph that was taken last week of one of these tanks, maybe not one that holds 84,000 gallons, but where the floodwaters actually had it down on its side, and that occurred on Route 23. So I think the note that you have dwellings that are within close proximity of this site, one within 200 feet, the other one within 600 feet, where if these tanks happen to go over or there's an accident, the potential of harm to county residents exists. Also noted in going through the JB floodplain permit application, and unfortunately I did not have money to make copies of it because our fees are $1.50 for the first 3 copies and then $1 per page thereafter. So I sat in the clerk's room and reviewed and tried to take notes. But what I noticed with the JB application in particular in comparison to other floodplain ordinance applications that have been received, there's a lot of extraneous, irrelevant information that's padded in there. An example is what was paid to the property owner for whatever. I don't know if it was damages or for a pipeline right away. It had absolutely nothing to do with the floodplain ordinance. There was also other information that just, to me, it appeared to mask what the real details were. That's just my own personal opinion. And of note, for the people that have filed this appeal, our particular concerns are for the safety of the county residents. Not just the people that live in the immediate vicinity, but also for the residents that drive that road, the people that drive past that site to go to work, the school buses that drive past that site to take our kids to school. And we have had situations in the past where residents during flood situations have been stuck in between areas because of flooding. It's happened to me, it's happened to all of us, I think. So, and in situations like that, if something catastrophic would occur with flooding on that site, the other aspect of that is emergency personnel cannot get in to help, okay? And I ask that, and it also worries us that chemicals that might be on that well pad will end up in our creeks and in our water wells. And as the appeals board, I feel that you have a responsibility to protect the residents of this fine county. And another concern that we have is the fact that you have a company that the president of the company signed off in the original well permits that he was aware that a floodplain permit might be necessary to acquire from on the county level. Signatures on the application. But yet, they proceed without contacting the county to find out what the process is or applying for a floodplain permit. And it was only through residents seeing what was going on and pointing it out to our floodplain coordinator that a stop work order was issued. And we find that it is rather interesting to note that a company can do whatever they want to do and then apply for an ordinance or permit after the fact. You know, after the fact. Something wrong with that picture, but that might not. In what I presented to the appeals board, in the back of that, there's a picture that to me is heartbreaking. I took this photograph last December, okay? And of note are the two young children who at that time were living in that trailer. Note the two tanks. Those particular tanks were holding water that was being pumped from the McElroy Creek into those tanks for the vertical drilling process. Of note, one of those tanks earlier, and I have a picture of it, the first seam down from the top was spewing water out. Okay? So, that one's a heartbreaker for me. And that's why I, who do not live in that area, filed or went through and contacted people to see if we could do an appeal, is to protect the innocent. The other photographs that were included in the permit or this appeal that I gave you this is taken from Google Earth. It shows Route 23. It shows where the trailer and the well pad are and the relationship of the proximity of that. Then also included, this is the photograph taken going north on Route 23, where you see the trailer, you see the well pad, and you see that the well pad site is completely level with Route 23. You can also, there's another picture, I believe, in here showing what I was talking about, where to drive into that trailer's driveway, there's a dip down. Well, I can produce it, but I don't think I included. The other stuff that was included in the permit are shots from the West Virginia flood tool that shows the risk assessment for the area as well as the elevations and the contours. And I do not know when this particular work was done, because once again, the elevations that are shown on here would be based on elevations that probably existed prior to the well pad being constructed. And then the other shot that I included in the appeal, this is also from the West Virginia Flood Tool. And what this shows is, it might not be real easy to see on here, but it's a three-dimensional shot of the waters that drain into that area. If you are familiar with that site and you've driven there, there's probably maybe 2 or 3 different streams, that are emptying down from the hollows, and how the hillsides lay as far as how the basin or whatever, I can't remember the proper terms, like how that water would gush, like come in there. And this, I don't know if I showed you this. This is a picture of where Broad Run runs into McElroy Creek on Route 23. This was last Tuesday. Okay? This was last Tuesday. And this, I believe, was after the water started receding. Okay? So it was probably higher than this. And I know this last flood we had on Tuesday, it seemed for the waters to recede took a lot longer than the one we had before. I mean, so, it's when I say it seems like it's getting worse. Okay, Mr. Tennant, a procedural question, since I'm the pro se person, is that the right word?
That is the right word.
No, you can't. Keep your mouth shut.
Address it to the president of the board.
What I would like to ask is there anything else that I need to do at this particular point in time as far as either giving you more information, or I know Mr. Tennant explained stuff, but like I said, I'm just a retired old lady that's trying to muddle through this, so.
I think you presented all your evidence.
Okay.
The question should be, do you have any more evidence to present?
Do you have any more evidence?
Not currently, but if more evidence is needed, I will be more than happy to supply it.
I would advise the president that tonight is the hearing to present all evidence, and if you have evidence, it should be submitted tonight, and there's no process under the ordinance to submit it later than today's hearing.
But there's no process under the ordinance that says you can't either.
Well, I would affirmatively say that the hearing's tonight, and this is what we're holding, an evidentiary hearing to accept evidence, and this is your day in court, so to speak, to do that. So it should be done tonight. The evidence will be closed at the end of the hearing.
Am I going to have an opportunity to speak again, or is...
I would...
Not tonight, I don't think. Am I correct?
She will have I think I would advise the board to consider allowing her to ask any questions, and if there's a brief rebuttal of evidence based upon something that was presented anew on either side, we would give either side a brief opportunity to present that evidence.
Actually, I have something else I would like to state before I give up my little spot here. I mean, okay, I submit the appeal. Mr. Jenkins and JB get a copy of it. I get nothing at all from them. I mean, was I supposed to ask for what they were going to be doing? Because they obviously got whatever we submitted, but we got nothing. So
the public file is available in the clerk's office. And
did they come in?
Any party could bring any evidence to this hearing that they desire to bring forward.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, Mr. Tennant. Was this sent to them, or did they come into the clerk's office and dig it out?
I don't recall.
I'm not sure. I did not personally come into the clerk's office, so it was probably faxed to us. We may have requested from the clerk and had it faxed or received it from the commission.
Our regular clerk is not here tonight, and I don't think Beth can answer that. She doesn't work in that office, and I surely can't answer.
I know. I just wanted to put that on the floor. Yeah, everything is. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, and
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome.